Stacy, I've known you for some time now. Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood? Just give us a little bit of your background.
Um, I grew up in Coeur d'Alene till I was in the fourth grade, and then we moved to the Silver Valley. My dad was a miner at Sunshine, and my mom was at home till I think I was in eighth grade, and then she went to work for U.S. Bank. My dad drank. Um, Seems like I guess pretty heavily when I think about it, especially on weekends. Um, I don't remember him ever seeing him and my mom fight too much. There was no cussing or anything in my house. Um, Surprisingly, my dad was very protective of me. I mean, like, he wouldn't even let anybody cuss around me or anything like that. Um, I went to church from like the time I was in kindergarten till I rode the joy bus till I was in fourth grade. Twice a week, my parents shipped me on the joy bus, so I believe that's where I got my roots. And when we moved, when we did move to Rose Lake, um, I guess that's kind of when things kind of started to change in my life. My dad started molesting me, and I don't remember like how old I was exactly, but it would always, most of the time, it would be after he was drinking, but not always. So, yeah, and I got into horses when I was in sixth grade, and I was queen for my saddle club. I omoxied every weekend. That was my thing until I was a senior in high school. Then I got into team roping and was a header. Um, I had gotten a scholarship to go to Bozeman, Montana for rodeo, and I didn't get a go because I found out I was pregnant shortly after graduation. And so, never did drugs. I was very anti-drug, actually. I did smoke pot once in high school, and I didn't like it. I never smoked cigarettes. We did go to keg parties, when I was like a junior and senior in high school, but they were out in the woods, and it was just, a few of us, and
You stayed busy with your horses.
yeah,
Good.
that was my thing. I rode every day after school, and horses was my life. So,
Where did it go wrong, Stacy?
um, probably when I had to get rid of my horse. um, after I had my son. Well, I had bought a brand new trailer, and I had to move my trailer from out by Rose Lake to Pinehurst, and I needed the money to do it. And so my dad had loaned me the money on his credit card, and I had to pay him back, and I couldn't afford to at the time, so he made me sell my horse. And I'd sold my horse like 3 times to people, and then I would back out on it. And finally, the last time, I couldn't even be there when the people came, and my dad sold him. And so I had started dating this guy shortly after I had sold my horse. And I knew he was a pot smoker. I didn't know that he was into the other stuff. And then when I found out, I had my hunches, but I don't know. We were going out around the lake one day, and my childhood girlfriend was with us, and somehow they were talking about, they called it white at the time, and I remember sitting in the back seat of the car kind of freaked out, and they were gonna go do it, and so I had this thing that if I didn't do it with him, he was gonna like her more than he liked me. And
You say do it. Explain. Do it.
do the dope.
Okay.
Without me, and so I did it with him, and it really, to be honest with you, it freaked me out. I couldn't believe I had done it. I was just instantly ashamed. In fact, we ended up leaving him at the store. He was in the store, and we took off and left because I just didn't want to be around him anymore. And then eventually I seen him again, and then I went to a horse auction, and I walked straight in, and we never went to the horse auction. And I had called my mom one day, and I said, "Let's go." And she's like, "Okay." So we went, and I walked straight to the back of this corner, and there was my horse, and he looked really bad, and I remember I just remember it broke my heart. I could tell that he'd been rode hard. His feet were just totally almost gone. And he seemed almost lethargic, just like his spirit had been broken. And it broke my heart.
You were close to your horse. Your horse was
Yeah.
your friend at the time. Okay?
Yeah. And I went and found somebody that worked there, and I asked him who owned the horse. So I wanted to find him. I was mad. And they said that he'd been dropped off there since Monday. The horse auction's on Saturday. And so I says, "Well, who's leading him through?" And they said, or who's going to ride him through? And they said, "Well, he's not going to be rode through. They're just going to lead him through." So I volunteered to do it because I figured it'd be like closure for me. And they were like, "Oh, you can't ride him in. He's crazy," they said. But I did, and I rode him in, and I rode him bareback, and it was like the minute I got on him, it was like he was back to himself again. It was like all of a sudden there was that connection again, and he was totally changed, and I don't know, he went for $750, and this was a horse I had gotten offered $6,500 for. So that tells you what bad shape he was in. I took him out and I put him in the pen, and the guy came up to me, and when he found out how lame he was and stuff, he asked me if I wanted to buy him, and I'm like, okay. So I had called my dad and asked my dad for the money, and he told me no, that he wasn't going to buy a lame horse, and so I knew that the guy was going to have to put him down. And I think I went home that night and used pretty straight for a year after that.
After that particular night, okay, was it a continual thing for you? I mean, it was really hard to stop after that? It was a depressing type of thing? It just started out depressive?
Yeah, I mean, I used to get away from what I was feeling.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And how old are you now, Stacy?
30.
Okay. So for 8 years, to get out of depression, anxiety, things that irritate you and depress you, you've learned to use drugs.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Has it been very hard on relationships with you as far as parents, family, husband?
Oh yeah, my mom is several times just kind of said she was gonna wipe her hands of me. My husband's left me a couple times because of it. And
how did it make you feel? Did it help you to have your mother or your husband almost wash their hands of you? How did that make you feel?
Broken.
So you think if you were broken, you would have stopped the usage. But did you stop the usage?
No, because I had to cover up that hurt I was feeling. And so it's like I just had to do more to just bury what I was feeling.
That's a very important thing that you just said. I think it's important that you maybe might want to cap on that just a little bit. Whenever you're going through depressing type of things in your life, no matter how much pressure was put on you, you felt like you had to do more rather than I have to quit, I have to do. Wow.
Definitely at first.
Is this common for most?
I believe so, yeah.
Out of 10 friends, once you started using, out of 10 friends, and you were pretty much, you hung around with a lot of different people, but out of the 10 friends after you started using, how many of them, once you started using and hanging around a bunch of other people, how many of those 10 friends used or abused drugs or alcohol?
Probably all of them. Yeah.
Wow. And you knew a lot of different people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What does your husband do?
He's a Kootenai County Sheriff's deputy.
Wow. How did that make you feel?
Scared. Intimidated. Part of it made me feel safe, but mostly, I guess, intimidated. And yeah.
So even having somebody in law enforcement, having somebody that could pop you at something like that could nail you at something like that still didn't stop you from using.
Mm-mm.
Marlon, as much as you work with these people, are you telling me that they can actually manipulate you enough to even get you to believe, because you saw it every day, she was able to make you believe that she was clean?
Absolutely. And probably, without a doubt, much easier if it's your wife, and I would assume your child, because for one thing, you don't want to believe it. The last thing you want to believe, especially having gone through where we had gone, and I've always said I told Stacy, I want to see you win, and I want to be a part of it. I want that victory in your life. But it came to a point where I was so fooled in so many ways, and there are a lot of factors, but primarily that closeness. And I tried to give my wife all the trust I could. I didn't want to insult her at some points by us, looking at some of her activities and saying, it seems like maybe something's wrong here. And so I did a lot of things wrong. But I really think if you have that suspicion about your spouse or about your child, that you need to probably investigate beyond what you talk to them about.
So not only ask the pointed questions, but do your own investigation. Find out where they are, what they're doing.
Right.
It's because it can be hidden very well.
Absolutely. And like I said, in the line of work that I'm in, it was particularly embarrassing in some ways. But I will also say that when it there are good people everywhere, there are understanding people. When you take on a certain demeanor and you express yourself, people have a tendency to roll with you unless it's real important to them. And so if you're in a real down, you're talking someone down, or you're negative about them, people will generally see what you're doing,
right,
and kind of, well, you're right. You've got every right to get out of this. You have, this. You'd be crazy to stay. But there's also a point, and the Bible says there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. And one particular deputy I worked with, and I'll always appreciate his trait of listening to something I had to say and then going, like he was going to start to say something and stop and think before he said it. And he turned out to be, without a doubt to me, someone that God put me close to, that tempered me in some ways, and helped me to see and to reason on some things, But I got a call because I had filed for divorce. The papers were there. Probably 5 days from the default period of the divorce, I got a reply from Stacy. I read the reply many times. It made me think, but it didn't convince me not to do it. It made me think. There were points that she was committed. She was trying to get help for the health of the family. She wouldn't break the vows by law or by God, and because she had made those vows and she was serious about them. And I thought about those things, but I was very negative, and people around me were very negative. I did think about it, and I read it many times. And she had written me a letter too that said, divorce is wrong, and I'm trying to get help. And I thought about that because I agreed with that. I agreed with that. The last thing I ever wanted, ever in my life, was a divorce. And to be facing a second one for me was very, very hard thing to do. It wasn't easy to do that. I hated the thought because I never wanted to be a divorced man. I got the reply. I kind of just let it go. And then one day I got a call from one of those that was working at the rehab, at the ranch, as we call it. And she asked me, she said, would you sit down with Stacy and the pastor and just talk? She really doesn't want this divorce. And I said, no, I won't. And I had quite a discussion with her. She had a wonderful manner. And so I talked with her, and I said, but I won't do it. I can't. I said, here's where I'm at. I love Stacy, and I would tell you that, but I can't do this anymore. She left me with this. She said, would you pray for God's will? And I'll pray for God's will, and we see what happens. I said, absolutely. I have nothing against praying for God's will. That's a smart thing to do. But I remember also thinking when I hung up, what's she going to think when God's will is that I get divorced because I can't do this anymore? Anyway, I waited a couple of days, and I said, I said I would promise. I promised I would pray for God's will. And so I went into a night of prayer. And that I petitioned the Lord, and I said, Lord, there have been a lot of things here that I cannot deal with. I've proven that I can't handle it. A lot of things I've done that are wrong, it's just a big mess. Here I am. And I wonder about things like faithfulness, because so many times that's sacrificed when it comes to drugs. And I worried about that a lot. And what should I do? I'll do what you want me to do. What do I do? Just let me know, and I'll do it, because I have no other answers. I'm praying for your will, and that I recognize it. And for those that have ever experienced God communicating with you, and for the prayers I had said in my life, for the things that I thought I had done that would have pleased God, I've never had this feeling before. And that feeling was to know God's communicating with you. I didn't hear a booming voice. I just had a beautiful calm. You're someone who is communicating with you. And we can all learn from his communication, because he's understanding and he puts you at ease. And that's important in a conversation with someone, and God himself does it. And the clarity, there was no doubt in my mind. He revealed to me, he said very clearly, look inside yourself. You know how much you love her. You know you love Stacy in your heart. This is hard for you because you love her. And this, in fact, is the gift in a woman that I have given you. This is her. She has been faithful to you. He made that clear to me. And you need to work with this. There are problems here that have to be dealt with. You need to support your wife. You're not supporting her at this point as far as a drug addiction. If she had a disease and it was killing her, you'd be by her. That became very clear to me. Mm-hmm. And at this point, good. Something else is killing her. Yeah. And just like you would never leave her then, and you know in your heart you're the kind of man who would not do it. You won't leave her now.
It just wasn't your upbringing.
No. And so that was really the extent. I mean, I every detail I can't just bring up right now. But then it turned to me, and I really believe, and I've been helped to understand even since then, that when God's communicating with you, he can't control. He knows you can't necessarily control that other person. But if you concentrate on what you need, then he can work with that other person. You're supportive, what have you. And so he turned to me and he said, you've hidden from me. He said, you have withdrawn any emotion for me for a number of reasons. And he told me, he said, Stacy is a spiritual woman. She wants that. She loves that. You've seen it. And I had seen it. I had seen I'd
Yeah.
seen her delve into the Bible and study and talk so positively about it. I knew that about her. And yet there were some differences that we had theologically, where kind of separated us a little bit. But he said, you felt like you supported her. And you've said, I support her because I allow her to go to church. I'll watch the children. She can take the car, gas money to go to church. Not an issue. You never stand in her way. But that's really not the spiritual head she needs. You need to be a spiritual head. You need to be a spiritual man and a covering for your wife. And that involves having a relationship with me. And if you do that, this is everything you ever wanted. All I ever wanted was a happy family life. I love my family. Marriage should be refreshing, and we didn't have that. We didn't have that refreshment of being in love with one another. And this is what God put together, and it builds me up every day. We didn't have that. Not that you don't have your hard times, but ultimately that's what's there. But he told me, you be the spiritual head of your family. You be the spiritual man, and this will happen. I would say to recognize that you're very limited in what you can do. In your imperfection, you can think that you have what it takes to handle it, but the frustration you feel, the anger you feel, the hurt you feel, they're all very real feelings, and they're natural. But Satan is a powerful enemy, and drugs, and I've seen it in my career, all too evident, is a very successful tool that he uses, and it's a part of a spiritual warfare, and the Lord is what you need. I've tried to fight it both ways. I've tried to fight for the beauty in my life both ways, and by depending on the Lord and letting him work, and even if you're not the addict, conforming to what he wants for you as a couple or for you as a family with your children is absolutely what you need, because I've seen it work. And he's the only one that Satan has a fear of. Satan doesn't fear you, but he fears you with God's help.
You definitely need God. He can take that pain and the suffering and the shame. Most of all, he takes the shame and he just takes it away. And he refills it with a peace that you just can't describe. And he gives you a new high, and there's no high like the Most High, and that is Jesus. And yeah.
Amen.